Morvern Callar by Alan Warner. He'd cut his throat with the knife. He'd near chopped off his hand with the meat cleaver. He couldn't object, so I lit a silk cut. A sort of wave of something was going across me. There was fright, but I'd daydreamed how I'd be. He was bare and dead, face down on the scullery lino with blood round. The Christmas tree lights were on, then off. You could change the speed those ones flashed at. Over and over you saw him stretched out, then the pitch dark with his computer screen still on. I started the greeting on account of all the presents under our tree and him dead. Useless little presents always made me sad. I start for me, then move on to everybody when I greet about the sad things. Her from Corran Road with all sons drowned off the boats. She bubbled till she lost an eye. I greeted in heaves, and my nose was running. I dropped the silk cut, and it burned to the filter on a varnished floorboard. I stopped the greeting because I couldn't breathe and was perished cold. I slowed down the speed of the flashing Christmas tree lights. I put on the scullery light, then the immersion heater, then the bar fire, but I didn't put a record on. I supposed I was stewing over going out to the box by the garage to phone police or ambulance or whoever took things to the next stage. Then all in the port would know. They'd print a photo in the paper. His old dad, who lived away in a country, would have to be told. My foster dad and the railway and all in the superstore would know. That immersion heater took a half hour, and it was 8ish on the video. I needed to boil the kettle to get the mess off of my face, what with the greeting and that. I couldn't get past him without stepping in his blood, and I was scared to go too nearish, so as I got my things in the bedroom, I took the last pill in that cycle. I came back towards the scullery, then took a running jump over the dead body. The sink was full of dishes, so I had to give them all a good rinse. The face was by my bare foot. I fitted the kettle spout under the tap. Then I put my underwear over the spout and tugged the elastic round the sides. When the kettle boiled, I put the warm knickies on. I jumped back over him, ready to throw the kettle away. After all, you don't want to scald your legs. My foot came down in blood. I stepped forward and swore out loud. I wiped my foot on the rug. I washed my face in the sort of burnt smell kettle water, then I needed toilet. Sitting there, I saw I'd locked the door, even though he was dead. I did a number 1, then a number 2, remembering always to wipe backwards. Though he was dead, I used the air freshener spray. For sake of something to do, I tidied away all the presents for him, Red Hannah, Vanessa the Depressor, and Lana into the boiler cupboard. I lit a silk cut. I lined up the presents for him to me, then just tore them all open, one after another, like apple boxes at the work. A polished steer-hide jacket, a packet of yellowish low denier stockings, a lighter that looked goldish, a basque thing all silky, and a dear-looking Walkman with batteries in. I started to greet again as I stepped in the blood and knelt. I ended up touching his hair because the rest was cold. All floor blood had a sort of skin on. When I saw it burnt down, I pushed the silk cut butt in the blood and it hissed, snubbing out. I'd been greeting so long the water would be hot. Bits of the blood skin hung from my legs when I stood up and fresh drops came off. My bare feet left blackish footprints across the floorboards. I wiped the footprints into smears with the shiny Christmas wrapping paper. I kneeled in the bath. I washed my knees and legs and in me. I got my legs warm so there were no goosebumps, then shaved them in that. I gave my shin a wee nick with the razor, and blood lifted in a bubble, then trickled quick. I put in a splash of the bubble bath and filled the tub. The water was too burny, so I put in cold. The flat had warmed up and was quite cosy. I used every clean towel on me. In the bedroom, I used moisturiser all over and put the knickies back on. I adjusted the straps on the new basque thing and buttoned up a long shirt over it. I used a touch of Perfect Plum glimmer sticks and Raspberry Dream powder blush, then did my lips with unsurpassed wine. When I held the tissue taut to take the excess off, the paper ripped, so I did a deep breath and used another. My nails were in a state as per usual, so I sat blowing on them after putting a little more dusky cherry on. I tied the reddish scarf into my hair and put the greenish socks on. I was stewing over the yellowy stockings under the velvet trousers, which feel quite rampant, or the jeans with the knees out and all the slashes up the back to the bum with tights under. I plumped for just the velvet trousers. I laced on the baseball boots and used the goldish lighter on a silk cut. When I put the steer-hide jacket on, it had a smell and creaked as you moved the arms. I put the Walkman in the pocket and the plugs in my ears after fitting the long earrings on. I took some cassettes, new ambient, queer jazzish, dark side hardcore, and that C60 I'd made with Pablo Casals doing Nana on his cello again and again. I sat on the toilet with the door locked, listening to all the stuff on the Walkman. The auto-reverse turned the cassettes without having to take them out. I tried the goldish lighter on silk cups. Every now and then I lifted the toilet seat to drop the butts in. When I came out, the video showed 12-ish. Everyone who was going to work from down the stair would have gone, so there'd be less chance of nosy parkers when the ambulance or police came to take him away. On the computer screen was note on the disc, XXXX. I pressed the diddly push to eject the floppy disk after a Z and Y in the keyboard, then I pulled out the plug. I put the disc in the jacket pocket. I grabbed 2 packs of silk cut out the carton and put some of the cassettes in the jacket pockets. I switched off Christmas tree lights, fire and immersion heater, then counted the change in my purse for phoning police or ambulance or whoever, from the box by the garage. I wasn't going to have enough till payday. On the mat was a catalogue from a model shop in the south. I chucked it in the bin, locked up careful, then moved down the stair past the doors of other flats. Out, there were no people. Puddles were frozen and wee ones off from school had burst all ice. A car passed and you saw smoke clinging round the exhaust. Miles Davis doing He Loved Him Madly off of Get Up With It was going in the ears. My hands were in the jacket pockets, the nose was cold like it was pinched between finger and thumb. I touched the computer disc in the other pocket. As I walked up to the phone box, I felt the cassette moving next to one pinky, and it was that bit where the trumpet comes in for the second time. I walked right past the phone box. It was the feeling the music gave that made me. It was a dead clear, freezing day with bluish sky, the silvery sun, and you saw all breath. I walked by the Phoenix in the Bayview. Across the bay between the walls of St. John's and Video Rental, you saw snow on the mountains of the island where my foster mother lay buried. Along at the seawall, people were crossing the road into shops. All cars and buses had smoke showing round the exhaust. A man inside a car moved his hand at me from across the road. I waved back. It was just Ram Raider, my driving instructor, giving a lesson. A fishing boat was coming in with a light on the mast. I stopped and watched the boat pass over to the railway pier. I took a big breath of the bright morning and used the goldish lighter on a silk cut. I changed cassettes to Music Revelation Ensemble at the railway station, looking up to see the time. I knew my foster dad was away down through the pass on the early train, so I crossed the square. The Christmas tree with the coloured household bulbs was still switched on. The other phones were there, so I walked round the corner the way I had for 8 years. I stopped in the Superstore car park to finish the silk cut. Then when the drums came in after the solo bass on Body Talk, I strode on through the sliding door and up to the sign-in book. Trust creeping Jesus to be stood there, and he moved his mouth at me. He flicked one of the earplugs out. "You're late by 45 minutes, so get up there," I heard in his south accent. "Christ, had Christmas already?" he says, nodding at the steer-hide jacket and the Walkman. I put the plug back in my ear and took the door up to the ladies' staff room. Lana from bakery was there, lifting her hand to lick round her fingers. They were all sugar from stacking donuts. "Where did you get the jacket?" she says. I put it round her shoulders and, touching it, she asked if my boyfriend gave it me. She called him by name. I got my locker key and took out the nylon uniform, the apron, the tights in a ball, and the schoolish shoes. When I saw the uniform, it nearly made me turn round and tell Lana he was dead. She was playing with the Walkman, winding forward so you heard Music Revelation Ensemble all far away like. Lana was laying off how bakery had kept her on over 5 hours without break, and there was a law against it. "Have you bought all his presents?" she says. I nodded and tugged a leg out the velvet trousers, then undid the buttons and took off the shirt. You could see the basque thing. I put on the brownish tights and the uniform while Lana buttoned the neck up and smoothed the nylon onto me with her palms. Then she gently took my earrings out and was biting her lip. "You weren't allowed jewellery on the section." "Why did you go to the fuss of putting these in, Morvern?" she says. I put the jacket and the Walkman in my locker. "They're lovely. So is your slip thing," Lana says, pointing at my chest. Then she goes, "Since we were off for 3 days, would I come to the man trap and get mortal after close down?" She would meet me with a summer bag, shoes and the little black number, though it had a toty hole at the shoulder. I could change in the bogs on the North Pier. I nodded. She told me a time and place, then showed the half-bottle Southern Comfort hidden in her locker. She lit a Regal and I took a drag. I nodded, smiled. Down the stair, the section was pandemonium. Smug Slug had gone and let them put too many tatties out on the shelves. Loads had fallen and were getting kicked about by shoppers' feet. I kneeled to pick them up, then stepped in and shoved the tatties to the back of the shelves. I could never grow nails on that job. My hands were all soil. Down the tunnel by the fridges, Smug Slug tried to give me hell for lateness. I was too famished and walked away. In the fridge, I pinched plums and polished them on my apron, a bit leaning forward so the juice dripped on the floor. I loaded a six-wheeler with loose carrots, pre-packed tomatoes, icebergs, cos, watercress, loose mushies, pre-packs, and caps. Smiler came out the tunnel, empty boxes stacked on his six-wheeler. He started breaking the boxes down for the baler. "Going out tonight," he says. I goes, He says, "Man trap." I goes, "Uh-huh." I pushed my six-wheeler along the tunnel in between shoppers. When I was tipping out the loose carrots by resting the pallet against my thigh, then twisting to coop it, Smiler pushed along a six-wheeler stacked taller than me with soft fruit. He shouted to Shadow the shelf stacker on the next section about the last weekend at the Man Trap. I took my empty boxes and pallets back to the baler. I stacked the pallets, put the wooden boxes by the service lift, then broke the cardboard ones down, being canny not to slash my hands on the copper staples. I heaved the cardboard in and put it on crush. When Smiler arrived, I handed in the list written on a torn bit of box. 3 delicious, 3 grannies, 2 New Zealand, limes loose / pre-pack, oranges dozens and halves, loose garlic, avocados. Smiler told about Smug Slug and how I should have been section supervisor. I just looked at him and goes, because with my discipline record and the way Creepin' Jesus was browned off at me, I was stuck in that job forever. Smiler started stacking full pallets and boxes on his six-wheeler. You knew by the time I had broken his boxes down, I would follow on with more veg and soft fruit, then he would go over tatties. You kept the section on the ball. After 4 hours exact, I tanked it up the canteen. I'd used the goldish lighter on a silk cup before I was up the stair. I got 2 rolls and put ketchup in them, then sat beside Tequila Sheila from Tills. "New jacket? Saw you come in with it," she says. "Uh-huh," I goes. "What you doing for Christmas? Just going about a red Hannah's?" "Are you on to close down?" "Man trap?" "Uh-huh." "Oh well, I'm on. See yous both tonight." Tequila Sheila and me were in that gang on the scheme, the Complex Girls. They stopped talking when I started going about with him, watching him build the model up in the loft. 'Cause of tallness, I'd started part-time with the superstore when 13, the year it got built. The superstore turn a blind eye, get as much out you as they can. You ruin your chances at school doing every evening and weekend. The manager has you working all hours, cash in hand, no insurance, so when 15 or 16 you go full-time at the start of that summer and never go back to school. Afternoon was as per usual, but when section was on the ball, Creepin' Jesus had me put on service at the Sea Cow's till instead of helping Smug Slug sort the load that arrived. At the till I filled plastic carrier bags with Christmas stuff for folk. A woman with a well-to-do South voice told me to wash my soily hands before touching her messages. Some bills came to hundreds of pounds. They all paid with these credit cards. I put the bags in trolleys and pushed them to the Volvos. I had a well-to-do family and their voices, the biggest bill and a trolley just for wine. A daughter my age, who looked on while I loaded the boot. No change for a tip because they used credit card. The husband went, "Merry Christmas." After service, me and Smiler let the section run down, but Creepin' Jesus made us stock up just before the superstore shut, so there'd be tons to take off after the shoppers left, though we weren't paid a penny after close down. I could see Smiler going to go mental, so as I nodded him to leave when the voice told the shoppers to go. The superstore was quiet, with most lights out to save electric. That fly devil Creepin' Jesus would be in his office with the one-way glass. I knew he would be looking down at me through the mirrors. I stacked the delicious in shiny piles. I put all the soft fruit and perishable veg in customer service trolleys, then shoved them 2 at a time down the tunnel into the fridges. I covered the tatties with sacks to slow down shooting, and I swept the section. I washed the shelves, tipping the buckets down the drain in the meat cutting room. You could see the pale yellowy maggots still there under the grate. I used to work in the meat. You cleaned up each night. Afterwards you smelled of blood, and it was under your nails as you lifted the glass near your nose in the pub. You pulled the bleeding plastic bag of gubbins, cut open by bones, to the service lift. Blood spoiled 3 pairs of shoes. You were expected to supply your own footwear. Up the lockers I put roll-on under my oxters and changed. I used the goldish lighter on a silk cut. As I was passing, Creepin' Jesus shouted, "Morvern," from his office. Inside he gave me an envelope and stared at me over his beard in that perv way. "Merry Christmas," he says. I just switched Music Revelation Ensemble on in the ears and walked out. In the car park I opened the letter under a light. I didn't look at words, just the overall number of lines on the paper. A lateness letter. A new line had appeared below the usuals, and that would say it was a final warning. I tore it into bits, then scattered them over the wall into the Black Lynn, the little river that flows under the port. In the night you could see breath billowing out under streetlight, all with Street Bride going in the ears, I walked into Harrow's, took a cheap bottle of wine to the till, and counted out most of my money. I walked down the Esplanade in front of the Marine and the St. Columba and the other closed hotels. I held the bottle inside the paper bag to my chest. Boys in cars were circling the port roads. You recognised the same cars again and again, and though it was cold, the elbows were out. Though alone, I climbed to the circular folly above the port. I put Can, Delay 1968 in my ears while I used the goldish lighter on silk cuts and bolted the wine. Up there in darkness, you could see the lights of the whole port, from the complex round the back to the piers below, like a model with the small hotels, little lights, circling toy cars and still boats in the bay. There's massive floodlights on the south pier where the island ferries tie up by the railway station. Below the folly, you see the north pier, the darkened bay, the first island, then the strip of darker sea to the snowy mountains of my foster mother's island where she's buried. Behind the complex, mountains go east to the back settlement, then west through the pass to the village beyond the power station. I put the empty bottle on the stone of the folly, and for a moment port lights were gathered in it. I smashed it against the granite circle. "O Little Star of Bethlehem" was in my ears. Gingerly I walked down Jacob's Ladder, the steep steps on the cliff behind the distillery. White steam from the roof was going straight up in the air, so close you could lean out and touch, then look up to where the steam vanished. On each platform bench, a couple were kissing seriously in the coldness. Lana was waiting outside Menzies. She was wearing the short skirt and the bolero jacket with her hair up. "Hello, Lizzie Longstocking," she says, lifting a summer bag with the superstore name written off it. "Are you immortal?" she says. We both went hysterical with laughing. We walked arm in arm to the toilets on the North Pier and got in the same cubicle. The bog creeper came out, or wee bothy, so I stood on the toilet seat and Lana whipped her skirt down to her boots and sat. After the bog creeper had gone, I sat behind Lana, and without talking we passed the Southern Comfort back and forth. You saw our breath between the gulps. I got silently stripped standing on the greenish socks it was so perishing. Lana brought out the little black number, shoes and the stockings. Then as I twisted and tugged the dress on, Lana's hair touched my eyelashes while she leaned across, tightening the bits on the suspenders. There was a tiny hole in the dress high up on the right shoulder above the basque. Lana took a black felt tip from her bag, and, biting her lip, she coloured in my skin under the hole. I licked my fingers to roll the stockings up and lifted the dress while Lana fixed the suspenders on. We put the long shirt, the velvet trousers, greenish socks, and the baseball boots in the superstore bag. I put the steer-high jacket back on and checked the computer disk was still there. Arm in arm, we walked over to the man trap. The slab, who was bouncer, put the carrier bag safe behind the counter, where the downstairs of the man trap became a bakery during the day. On the first floor, we stood in front of the mirrors in the toilet, and Lana tidied up my face, and I used her lipstick that was any old colour. In the big bar, it didn't look like there were many seats. Everyone was there, and mortal. Butter Mountain, the Golden Bidman, Overdose, Shadow, Tit, Pongo, Melon, Sully, The Shroud, Jay the Harbour, Goldfinger, Big Apple, Shagger, Super Chicken, Lauren the Gas, Spook, the King Prawn, Cheese, who's called Sud since he started washing, Yellow Pages, the Dilemma, Weed, Jenny Gabane, the 4x4's daughter, Marine Girl, the Sea Cow, a couple of the Dose brothers, that hippie girl Snowballs at the Moon, the Scowler, Synchro, Offshore, Smiler, and Haley. Overdose was playing pool with two boys, one with the hair that I like. The boys weren't port, maybe villages. When we squeezed by, Overdose says he was going to play them for his wife, and he pointed to me. I smiled with Lana, but I turned beetroot. Tequila Sheila waved. She was in a seat by the window, and there was space, probably because she was with the Panateen and Signal passed at danger. She was mortal on slammers, as per usual. We slid along the seat, and because we couldn't afford anything, Lana poured the last of the Southern Comfort into empty glasses. Tequila Sheila says his name, but I just smiled and shrugged. Tequila Sheila was telling Panateen the chef, and SPD, who was a train driver with Red Hannah, my foster dad, about how she met her husband, who was away in the jail. She was with two other girls watching three boys on the dance floor, so she had says, "Yous two pick the ones yous want, and I'll take the one who's left." We all laughed at this. You could hear the beat from up the stair. Though it was only bass and drums I could hear, you could tell it was that Don't Fear the Reaper, off of Some Enchanted Evening. I used the goldish lighter on a silk cut after offering them round. Lana told about her last boyfriend, that one Saturday they used her parents' bed, but he fell asleep drunk and wet it. Lana had to dry the mattress by the window with a hairdryer before her parents got back from work. "That's nothing," says Tequila Sheila, who told how the summer she was housemaid in the St. Columba, she took this guy back to the staff flats while mortal on slammers and crashed out on him before anything could happen. She woke in the morning with him gone and this bouffing smell, so she sat up and was covered in it, because he must have got down on his hunkers and done one right there on her stomach, then put the toilet paper he used in her purse. "That's townies for you," Tequila Sheila says. "That's nothing to what men will do," says Lana, and told about Femi, her pregnant sister, who lives up the stair from them in the complex. Lana heard another argument, so she ran up and let herself in. The brother-in-law had her sister's face in the scullery sink. He gave up and threw her on the lino, shouting that if the dishes had been done like a decent wife should, the water would have been deep enough to drown her properly. Tequila Sheila told about the first time she came to the man trap in high season. A boy asked her to dance, and when she said no, he pulled a flick knife on her. The two new faces walked by, and Lana bawls out about them winning me. I smiled at the one with the hair that I like, though they were both real honey bunches. "Afraid not," says the blonde. Central belt accents. "They were going up the stair to dance. They'll get their heads panned in," says Panatine. "You've an admirer there, Lana," says SPD. "No, I think it's Morvern they fancy," Lana says. Then she told how she decided to do taekwondo lessons, but when she phoned the number, a voice had goes, "Yes, can I take your order, please?" It was the Chinese carry-out who were doing it. I just went hysterical at this, and the others looked at me. Panatine laughed and asked if anyone wanted a wee Goldie, so I nodded. Tequila Sheila was telling how she went to bed with a man the last summer. Afterwards, he was going to put out the light. The man had took 2 toty wee hearing aids out both ears. In the dark, Tequila Sheila had went, "Can you hear me?" The man was silent. We all were in hysterics at that. Then Panatine materialised with the whiskey. I only drink whiskey when I've a cold and chapped lips, but I felt that sting then, though I'd no chapped lip. A good lot more Kalian went on, and we were all mortal as newts. Lana says, "Hey, Morvern has a secret." My whole body jumped with fright. "Morvern's got a special knee. Come on, show us the boys your special knee, 'cause it's Christmas," Lana laughed. It was only that, so as I relaxed, and reached up under the little black number, then undid the front eye hook on the left stocking. Panatine and SPD craned over. I lifted the leg to hold the knee under my chin, then felt Lana's fingers undo the back hook out of sight of the boys. Then Lana licked her fingers and rolled the stocking down over my knee as I stretched the leg out. Lana held the whole leg, bending at the knee under the orangey lights from the ceiling. See, goes Lana. Tequila Sheila sort of squeaked, then groaned and says, "Oh aye, there's stuff glittering under the skin." SPD goes, let's see. They could see the different coloured specks shining just under the surface of the skin and the whole knee sparkling when the beam of light caught it. "It's Christmas glitter," says Lana. "Amazing," Panatine whispered. These guys with tattoos across the way were really whistling at my bare thigh, but Panatine and my group were just staring at the glistening knee. It was when she was wee. She came horsing in the scullery, slid on her knees and skinned one deep on these Christmas cards she was making, and the glitter sunk right in her. They never got it all out of her at the hospital, says Lana. It was the first time I'd spoke that day, if you don't count the swear out loud when my foot touched the blood that morning. 'Cause I was mortal though, I says, I can still remember. My foster dad called 999 because it was just gushing blood, and by chance the ambulance was up the complex. I got put in the back with a really young girl who was having a premature baby right there and then. The nurse told me just to watch all the way to the hospital to keep my mind off my cut knee. The girl was screaming, and a wee baby girl was coming out. There was no talking. Then SPD says how the glitter would sink deeper and go invisible the older I got. Everyone was watching Lana lick her fingers and roll the stocking back up my leg, then me smiling and hooking the strap on the front, and Lana reaching behind. I don't want the glitter to go away, I says, tugging down the dress. Ah, but it will, Panatine went. There was a bit of no talking, then Panatine asked if I got teased at school for having no known mother or father. I told about a day in geography when we all had to do a talk about the village where we were born. When my turn came, I'd goes that I didn't know what village I was born in, so the whole class laughed, and the teacher scolded me. I told about how my foster parents had says I was different from when I was wee, but it was only before my foster mum died they explained I was orphaned. I says how my foster mum couldn't have children, so her and Red Hannah fostered me and took in other special girls every summer. I goes about the girl I shared the bunk with for summer. She always wore suppositories and changed them 3 times a day. Eventually she told me that her father used to attack her every night. She discovered that if she wore suppositories, he couldn't get in her that way, and I cuddled her all night. Just then, a fight broke out between the 4 men across from us. The one with the tattoos and another bald, the Argylls, the 2 others, the Cosbys. 2 climbed on one and brought him down on a table. Glasses broke, and a man began pushing the neck of a beer bottle into another's eye, shouting how the Argylls was full of Fenians, so he was going to get an eyeball in the bottom of the bottle to hold up to the light and see how green it was. The slab marched in, held something to his cigar, and chucked it at the feet of the 4 fighting men. There was a big bang with screaming and smoke, then the men holding their ears as the slab charged in, and 2 other barmen took pick handles to the legs of the fighters. The slab had thrown one of the big lifeboat fireworks he used. A guy passing says that you wouldn't believe the one with the tattoos had been on a life support system since the last weekend. I could hear Cameo going, so with all the Southern Comfort drunk, Lana and me bombed it up the stair to dance. It was She's Mine off of the Word Up album, and that went straight into Just Be Yourself, that was only previously available on a 12-inch. Lana and me did little routines together with arms and legs in rhythm, and we shook our hair lots. The boys who'd been playing pool were there, the one with the hair. Smiler was there, loafing about in his leather jacket with a pint. Lana and me put our arms round him and kissed him on lips. We didn't say words, just cheekily sipped from his pint and danced. I knew all the music. I was trying to be ahead of the beat. My legs followed bass and drums, while my arms and body were guitar or other noises. A whirling arm was a guitar solo. The boys moved over to us. The boys bought Lana and me beer in bottles, and you could hold the bottles with 2 fingers while you danced, stopping on occasion to use the goldish lighter on a silk cut or regal. I danced with the one boy, then the other, and Lana did too. There were Christmas songs. The lights came up and you could see the sweat on Lana's forehead. You going home? Lana says. No ways, I goes. The boys had a car and were going to a party, so I got the steer-hide jacket off a chair back, and pulling it on, I felt the disc in the pocket. Lana did my makeup in the toilets, and all began moving into the night. As we filed out, Overdose was unconscious in the chair helping prop the door open. On the pavement, people were shouting and hanging about. The King Prawn walked by with a massive carry-out of bottles in a bin liner. A one-armed fisherman came up to Tequila Sheila. They went away together. Everyone was watching the Lighthouse bar on the North Pier, where the police had arrested so many they were using taxis to take them away. Lana and me walked arm in arm behind the boys. I was famished, and they offered, so we waited in the queue outside the baked tatty shop. They always insist on putting meat in mine to fatten me up a bit, so I had one with nothing on it, not even opened. Steam came whooshing out when I lopped the top off outside, using a comb from the guy with the hair and handing it back to him. Lana and me ate in the back, and the car had a good stereo, Rem doing Try Not to Breathe off of Automatic for the People. I was listening to the lyrics awful closely. We were driving out the port beside the sea towards the back settlement, then below the fallen down castle to the sands. Only well-to-do lived there, in bought houses. Snowflakes began to fall. Lana and me stuck our heads out the same window, biting the flakes and having hysterics till we must have been blue in the face. The party was in a big bungalow with an enormous brae for a garden. Inside I danced and banged the record player. I was given a can of tenants. Some boy goes that his parents owned the house and they were away in a country. He turned and says to me about a university, how he designed houses there, then what house I would want designed, all in his South accent. I says, one where you couldn't hear men go to the toilet. I was in stitches. The guy wouldn't dance, so I did with Lana and the boys. When Lana and me talked to them, we put our hands on their shoulders and shouted in their ears. They had the names John and Paul, like disciples. People were chucking snowballs at the steamed-up windows, and one pane of glass smashed. Me and Lana ran out and chucked snowballs. The boy whose parents owned tried to stop it, but there was a big snowball fight right through the house. A huge snowman was getting built in the modern scullery. It snowed so thick it stuck to faces. Girls were using trays for sledges. Outside, the Paul got me by the legs and tried to give me a fireman's lift. We fell and I couldn't get away for being in hysterics. He kissed me on the mouth, and as he did it, my mouth was the only warm bit I could feel. I scalped it in with snow down the neck. I remembered, and my hand shot to the pocket, but the computer disk was safe. There was a dead exciting running snowball fight, with whole gangs screaming and laughing. Then I walked back up to the bungalow with the Paul. In the scullery, Lana was kissing seriously with the John, and people were putting a smiley face on the snowman, using assorted veg from the cupboards. Lana put her arm round me, and goes how perished I was. 2 girls were gallivanting topless, and Lana whispered, tarts. Some boys and girls from high school were having showers together and screaming because others were throwing snowballs into the steamy bathroom. The boy who lived there had been tied up and locked in a cupboard where they found skis, and the boy had gone fast asleep. Some girls were skiing a slalom down the garden and smashing into the fence. One of the topless girls walked right up to us and says, "There's another shower if yous are shy." It was a wee shower room off a huge bedroom. The bed was covered in coats and jackets, and a boy and girl sound asleep. There were dryish towels, so Lana and me got in and locked the door. Everything came off, and as per usual we got in together to save time. We tried not to get hair wet and soaped each other, laughing when she lathered the felt tip on my shoulder, then the glittering knee. I washed in myself again that day, and Lana put her hands up on the tiles to wash right in her. Lana says about wishing she was bigger in the chest, and I goes that I had nothing to beat there, and I was thin as a lat. We dried selves, then dressed, bumping each other in the little room. Through the house a lot had gone, and there was noise from one bedroom. Cans and bottles were everywhere, and crisps or nuts crushed into carpets. There was broken glass under a window, and the big smiling snowman in the scullery where some were still drinking. The John and Paul had claimed a bedroom with electric fire, candles, and some cans of tenants. They had a pack of cards. "Let's play strip jack naked," I blurted out. We drank at the cans, then eventually they got me down to the basque thing in one stocking, but Lana was topless with just the skirt and ankle chain. The males only lost shirts and socks. I was getting that bit rampant. With a candle, Lana showed them my glittering knee, and they both touched the skin with their fingers. Then she slowly lifted the basque from behind to show them the felt tip. Shadows were jumping on the ceiling, and I felt sick. Lana got me by the hand and took me into the bed. "Night-night and God bless," she says. I woke. Getting off of the bed, I stood on Lana, who was on the floor with both boys. In the toilet, I locked the door and bolted 3 times. I flushed the toilet and did my teeth with someone's brush. Through the scullery, the floor was flooded with inches of water. I drank out a milk carton and started to greet. Lana came from the bedroom with a steer-hide jacket and put it round my shoulders. She started footering about, getting one stocking back on and straightening them. Right enough, they were in a proper kerfuffle. Lana says, "Come and watch us," as she left. I sniffed. I felt the computer disc in the jacket pocket. I used the goldish lighter on a silk cup. "O Little Star of Bethlehem" off of Delay 68 was in my ears. I plucked up courage to take a keek in that room. In candlelight, Lana and the 2 disciples were bare on the bed doing everything. With her teeth together, Lana goes, "It's so rampant." I watched a good while, and a flush of rampantness went across me. I turned back to the scullery and sat alone. Waves of something kept going across till my face felt numb. There was freezing water at my stocking feet. The carrot that was the snowman's nose had fallen out. I touched the computer disc in the pocket, and you just knew it had that message from him on it. It was only saliva I bulked up in the sink. I ran the tap. In the toilet, I used the toothbrush twice. I helped myself to some talc, putting it here and there and that. Back in the scullery, I took the milk carton out the fridge, had a swallow, then crossed the passage to that room, put the milk carton by the bedside, and crawled in with the 3 nude bodies. I let them do anything to me, and tried to make each as satisfied as I could. I concentrated on the different positions. Later, curried with my face near the window, all 3 of them were at my behind, and as the wave of something went across so strong I was smiling, I stared up and out. The dark sky above the port was empty of any little star.